Oh, I was just doing my voice exercises, but it's time for the Nature Journal show. And right now, we are going to work from John Muir Laws, The Laws Guide to Nature Journaling and Nature Drawing and Journaling. And this is an amazing book. I'm sure a lot of you own this book on the bookshelf. And I'm sure a lot of you have not done all the exercises in the book. I know that I have not done all the exercises in the book. So I've got my chocolate, I've got my non-photo blue pencils, thanks to Eli, and we're going to dive right in. So I'm going to switch it to the document camera here. Thanks to everyone that's joining. I see there's some new people in the audience, and I'm really excited because tonight is going to be the last live episode for at least a month because I'm about to go to Costa Rica, and I didn't have the time to do a whole bunch of episodes in advance as I usually do. So we're going to be on page 174 and 175 if you have the book at home. Otherwise, you can just follow along with me. Should be super fun, super challenging potentially, but that's okay. We're just going to bust out this step by step. And I know for a lot of you, if you're anything like me, you have in the past just sort of skipped to the last drawing and you just try to draw this and you don't go through all these steps. There is a benefit to that, to being a rebel like that. But today we're going to just try to follow the directions. And there's a time for following the directions and a time for not following the directions. And speaking of following the directions, today I'm actually going to use the non-photo blue pencil, which Jack always talks about. I think it's even on the cover of the book. So you can tell he's really into it. And I haven't had these for a long time, but Eli mailed me some. So thank you, Eli, for being such a supportive fan and patron on my Patreon. So if you have the non-photo blue pencil, go ahead and get that ready. If not, just use a regular graphite pencil, but keep it light because we're going to start off by getting the proportions. And, proportions actually really matter a lot. So it doesn't matter if you do a perfect, polished exterior texture. It doesn't matter if you get the details totally perfect. If all of that is great, but the proportions aren't right, then it's not going to look like the animal that you're drawing. Oh, yay, Angie is here tonight also. I'm so glad that Angie is joining us. Glad you could be here, Angie. So we'll start with the non-photo blue pencil. It will probably not even show up on the camera right now. If not, if you don't have the non-photo blue pencil, go ahead and use the graphite pencil. So step one here is going to be getting these sort of proportions right. Step 0 is getting your chocolate ready. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here because we're about to dive into this salamander. And I don't know about everybody else, but here in California, this is the time of year to be seeing these types of animals. So it seemed like a good time to dive into the Laws Guide to Nature Drawing and Journaling on this page 174 and 175 to try to get all the way to this stage. And we're going to try to make it all the way there. So let's do it. Let's start off here with these general proportions. And the idea with this or with the graphite is that you start off with a really light drawing that allows you to block in the proportions and potentially erase later on. So let's try to just get these proportions here, and we'll just copy from this. And then in a bit, you'll be able to see the finished version, and we'll work from this. If you were in the field or working from a photo, you would be looking at this reference animal or photo the whole time, but we're kind of building it up from the book. So this is just, if you want to be a real stickler about the definitions, this isn't nature journaling. This is sort of like practicing nature journaling. And look at that. You can't see it at all probably on the, well, I guess you can see a little bit on the camera. So I'm going to go for this sort of posture line first and get that sweep. It's really important for the attitude. You would do this on a bird or a mammal as well. And you might have noticed that I started to block in the head first. That's a classic beginner mistake. Don't try to draw the head first. A lot of books will tell you not to draw the head first, even though You can see that I did that right away. Okay, so I got that sort of basic shape. Hopefully you can kind of see a teeny bit, teeny bit of that. I might have to switch to the graphite so you can see more. Next, we're going to look at these parallel lines. This is a really great trick. So imagine the legs are going to be coming out here, or sort of the shoulders here. So draw these two parallel lines. And then for the back sort of set of hips here, draw this other set of parallel lines. And then for the face too, and this applies to human faces as well. So it's sort of perpendicular to this posture line here. Whoops, I probably made that one a little bit too far forward, but I'm just going to flow with it. And there we go. All right, so that's step 2. Next, we're going to get the angles and proportions of the legs. Note that the upper arm and leg bones on the far side of the body are foreshortened. So over here on this side of the body, if we want to give the illusion of depth, we are going to be making these on this side shorter. So on the further side, make those arms and legs shorter. Oh, cool. Someone just saw a rough-skinned salamander on the Oregon coast. I'm glad that you're here also. I wish I had gotten into Dungeons and Dragons. I see that Eli, I tried to, but I didn't really have the community. I didn't have any friends that, in my mind, I thought I wanted to do it, but I never got into it because no one I knew did that. I heard that John Muir Laws was also into Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know if that's like a trade secret or if that's not supposed to be publicly known. He doesn't mention it in his book, but from a recent personal conversation, sorry, Jack, if I'm releasing sensitive information, but I doubt, I'm sure he's okay with it. But from a recent conversation, he did say that he was really into Dungeons and Dragons. And now I have to remember where that came from. Oh, I think I said something about DMs, and I was talking about direct messages on Instagram, and he thought I was talking about another type of DMs from Dungeons and Dragons. So, sorry to call you out, John Muir Laws, but nothing wrong with being into Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, so this is very hard to see, obviously, and I guess that is partly the point. Okay, so for step number 4, this is where it starts to get fun. We are going to visualize the negative spaces between the legs, tail, and body to help us cut in the angles and check the proportions. I love carving in the angles, and I'm going to switch from my blue pencil to the graphite. And yes, Angie, you are correct that you are correct that I am using the blue pencil for a change because I wanted, since I was doing all these exercises from Jack's book, I decided to actually follow his directions, which I'm usually bad at, and using the blue pencil. And Eli sent me some of the blue pencils to try out. So, but now I'm going to, for this section here, I am going to switch to the graphite to block in these shapes. So you can see here there's a little inset where he shows how you can shade in the negative spaces, and that helps you visualize the shapes better. Oh, Karen also saw a salamander in Los Angeles. Very, very cool. Okay, so I already made this a little bit longer than I should have, so I'll correct that right now, but I'm going to carve this in. It looks like that is actually smaller than what I made it. This is straighter than I made it. So now's your chance to sort of correct some of these things. I probably shouldn't go straight to the really dark yet, but there's this line and then a little bit of an angle here at the end. Remember, nature journaling makes it socially acceptable to talk to yourself. So if you're actually talking to yourself while you're drawing, it's scientifically proven to make your drawings better. So feel free to verbalize these sort of shapes as you draw them. So I'm noticing this kind of is very angular here and then more rounded out on this side of the tail. Okay, that's probably good for carving that in. That looks like about as much as he did there. So we're blowing through these steps. We're past step number 4. And I'm going to open the book up here so you can see all of this now. We didn't do all of this anatomy part here, but if you have the book, please look at that. And sending condolences to Angie. Lots of love to Angie for all of your loss this year. And we're glad that you're back here with the nature journaling community. Okay. All right. So now he says, draw the body with attention to the anatomical details described on the facing page. Keep looking back at the salamander for reference. So now I'm going to try to keep this so that y'all can see the finished one down here. And that way, if you get ahead of me on the steps, you can just keep looking at this one. Oh, awesome. Someone's tuning in from Costa Rica. That might be, I can't see your name on here. Maybe it's Evan Lobo. Let us know. Because from Facebook, we can't always see. I'm about to be in Costa Rica in less than a week. It's so crazy. Okay, so now I'm going to look. Now we're suddenly going to all these details, so don't get overwhelmed right now. Remember, we do have this scaffolding with the blue pencil, and we'll try to build off of that. I think it might be time to open up some chocolate already. This jump from step number 4 to step number 5 is kind of big, so I'm just going to make it a little bit easier with some of this chocolate. Besides, this chocolate is supposedly has probiotics in it, so it's healthy. And if it's more than 70%, then it fights cavities, according to this chocolate salesperson that I heard speaking one time. Okay, so we've got a lot of details to do here. So I'm going to start with the head, even though that's probably not what you're supposed to do. These lines right here, these blue lines right here, are supposed to tell me where to make the eye, even though I kind of just ignored them. But let's try to pay attention. So notice that this eye is popping out on this side, but on this side it's not popping out. So this is the same with like frogs and stuff. Remember, these are the things that make it look three-dimensional. So pay attention to those things, and you might be looking down here, but like the fact that this eye is sticking out and this one is not, that is very important to making this object, this organism, look three-dimensional. All right, so I'm going to go in here and get this arm. I'm still working with pencil, so I can always erase, but I'm not planning on it necessarily. Whoa, those are some ET fingers. I think I made those way too long. ET phoning home over there. And this one's really short. Something doesn't look quite right, but just going to go with it. Oh, Jackson's here too. Thanks for joining in, Jackson. Haven't seen you in a while. Oh, Angie, you sound like you're really busy, Andrew. That's great. Good to have you back on here, Jackson. Okay, so now we're going to get this salamander arm, and look at how we can exaggerate this one that's coming down here and make it look a little bit longer. Wow, these fingers really do look like some kind of weird extraterrestrial. And the fingers are important. If you're drawing specific species of salamanders, do pay attention to what the fingers actually look like, what the toes look like. Do they have webbing? Do they have weird little tips? These are important things to notice when you're drawing reptiles and amphibians a lot of times. So look at this elbow. And I'm not going to pay that much attention. I'm going to make this line kind of, notice how this back torso line has less detail on it, and it sort of fades away into the distance, whereas this front one, we want to get these folds, and these also describe the roundness of it. There's probably a very specific number, and the number helps you identify the species, but I'm just going to kind of guess them right now and skip to this leg back here. Kind of reminds me of bell-bottom pants, and these thumbs look like they're all really short. I wish I had the live organism in front of me or a photo, but we're just working from a book, and that's fine when you're working from a book, just to recognize that it's practice from a book. Okay, so now his tail comes up this way. One thing that you can always do is if you're doing this, if you're following along here, you could always, if you ever get stuck in a part of this or you're not liking the way it's turning out, you can always start a side one. You could always start another drawing on the side and sort of take out some of your rage or your disappointment or your whatever over here in this side drawing. Maybe it's your experimentation, your attention deficit disorder. You can always have these side drawings. You could like focus in on a foot over here. Nature journaling is an amazing way to kind of, it can accommodate all of us. So if you have these things that need to come out, you don't need to just get stuck in this one illustration. You can go over here and do a little side thing. You can go over here and write out some expletives or whatever you need to get out, some of your venting over here on the sides of the page, if that is going to help you come back to paying attention and sort of continuing forward. So remember that nature journaling is really accepting of all of that. Okay, let's see. I think I got it. Oh, I'm missing a whole leg. So it looks like this leg is kind of overlapped here, which is really challenging for me. And I know like when I was a kid, I used to draw dragons and I would never draw them in this sort of 3/4 view. I would draw them completely from the side so that I wouldn't have to draw any of the elements on the back. Oh yeah, Alexandra is here. So this leg right here, you can see it's overlapped partially by the body. This is something that can be really challenging to draw, but if you do it, it can really add to the realism of your drawing. So I'm just going to follow along with what John Muir Laws did here. And for those people who are just showing up, we are looking at the Laws Guide to Nature Drawing and Journaling, considered the Bible of nature journaling. It's so full of amazing exercises that most people that buy this book do less than 1/3 of the exercises. I actually haven't conducted a formal survey of that, but I would like to. It would be kind of interesting to know, because to see you know, like where we're at and sort of what are the things that are potentially holding us back from actually, like, why is it that I personally have done less than 1/3 of the exercises in this book. And so why is that? Like, what are those things that are actually preventing me from doing that? Because there's so much good content in here. You would think like, wow, if I just did all of these, I would be an incredible nature journaler and illustrator, because a lot of this is kind of almost on the science illustration side. All right, so I'm feeling pretty good about the overall shape of my salamander here. I don't know exactly which species of this is, but it's Insatina, which I think is the genus. And I'm just using a graphite. I believe this is 2B, not HB, but 2B in here. And I did start with the non-photo blue pencil. And this is the one that Eli gave me. So it looks like we're about to start with gouache. So with watercolor. So get your colors ready. If you only have colored pencils, you could probably follow along with colored pencils, but we're about to start with that. So one thing that I've noticed is that once you start to use watercolor, it can be a lot faster. So I appreciate that. And tonight, you know, with daylight savings time and everything, I think a lot of you will probably appreciate that because it feels later than it is. Last week, I was celebrating my girlfriend's birthday at this time and wasn't present for the Nature Journal show. So I missed the first episode since daylight savings time. Oh, Barbara is here too. Hi, Barbara. Okay, cool to have all these people here tonight. Lots of people from who are patrons on my Patreon. So I'm actually going to share that just so you all know how you could support the Nature Journal show, even for as little as $1 a month. We just had a party I guess it was near Halloween, so it's been a couple weeks, but really fun party. Lots of patrons joined in on the party, and if for $1 a month, it's a very small amount, but with a lot of people, I think there's 67 people supporting the Nature Journal show on Patreon right now. So you all are great, and you get access to a bunch of cool things, even if you're just supporting at $1, $1 a month. Okay, so it looks to me, he doesn't say what he's using, but he's doing this technique where he adds the shadows first. I often don't do this when I'm doing watercolor, but it's a cool technique and helps you get your values correct. So he says it is easier to visualize the shadows before you add other distractions. And he just says a dull purple-gray mixture. But my guess is that he's using this color right here, which is Shadow Violet. It's John Muir Law's favorite shadow color, that one and Bloodstone Genuine. They're both right here next to each other in his palette. And this is the official John Muir Law's palette. By the way, I have a really exciting episode. The last show that I'm going to make before I go to Costa Rica is going to be a shopping list, nature journaling wish list for the holidays with all of the best products and supplies that I've tried out. And I have a couple surprises on there and a couple discount codes from some different companies that I'm going to be offering. So stay tuned to that. But I will be talking about this palette, of course. It looks like Alexander's asking, yes, you can actually, if you're not into supporting on through Patreon, and I know some people prefer not to use that platform, I do on my website, marleypfeiffer.com, you can use PayPal and support it that way. Or it's always great if you just, share episodes of the show or anything like that, or tell people about it. That always makes a big difference. So I'm going to test how dark this is. It's still looking a little bit dark, so I'll water that down. I'm watering this down a little bit, and then I'm going to paint in these shadows that he has here. So there's some shadows here on these back legs. Those probably should have been palest, but they ended up being kind of dark. I'm going to do these, and I'm going to try to match the folds a little bit here. Not worry too much about keeping it in the lines. Remember, it's not kindergarten, so keeping the color in the line is not the most important thing. As it turns out, coloring within the lines is not actually the most important art lesson. And I don't know why they focus on that so much in elementary school. It might be sort of like more of a metaphor. Yes, Ivea, it's going to be, I think it's going to come out either Sunday or Wednesday. It's going to be, you'll see it soon. It's going to be a pre-recorded show, and it's going to be about, it's going to be a holiday special on different products for nature journaling. I have some really exciting packages that I'm going to be opening from a couple different companies. Several people have offered special discount codes just for people who watch the Nature Journal show. So there's going to be some discount codes for shopping at a couple different places for nature journaling supplies that you'll be able to get. Okay, so I kind of like this. This is at the stage where it's like you look at it and you're like, ooh, that looks pretty good right there. And unfortunately, we're going to have to push it further, so there's a chance it's going to look worse for a little bit, but sometimes it's good to practice like something looking worse and then looking better. Oh, yay, Cindy is here too and has a really great suggestion. That's one way to think about, that's one way to approach it. Thank you for that, Cindy. Okay, so now it says, begin to paint the body color, starting with the lightest values first. This salamander had light lilac undertones. So I'm guessing that he's using this Windsor Violet color. This is, I believe, in this John Muir Law's palette, this is one of the only colors that isn't from Daniel Smith, but is from Winsor and Newton. So it is called Windsor Violet, and it's right here. It's looking rather saturated. This is a secondary color, but it's still pretty saturated. So I'm going to try to like dilute it or maybe mix it with a little bit of this Shadow Violet because that's just like a little bit way too saturated. And I actually am going to switch to my other brush. So I always have two water brushes. I have one that's older and I have one that's newer. When they're new, especially the large size, the water flows really rapidly. And interestingly enough, initial experiences for many people with a brand new water brush can lead them to believe that they just flow too much and are hard to control. However, after you've had it for a little bit, it starts to flow more slowly. So that's why I put tape on my older one, and then my newer one, I know that it flows quickly and is better for the bigger washes. So that's what I need right now, because I'm going to cover this whole thing in sort of a lilac color. That's at least how John Muir Laws describes it. So let's test it over here. I use this part of my palette for sort of a little test swatches. This is looking way too dark right now, but I'm going to just sort of tone down this Windsor Violet with a little bit of the Shadow Violet, which is a less saturated color, and that looks good to me. Now I just need to add a little bit more water to it so it's not so dark, and that's looking great right there. So I think that's what I'm going to do. This brush, like I said, is newer and it's flowing a lot more water. This is the large Gouache. This is one of the most important nature journaling tools, in my opinion, top 3. So now I'm going to go through and just cover the whole thing. And I'm not going to think too much. I'm not going to let my perfectionist, saboteur voice interrupt this process. I'm just going to go quickly and cover this whole thing with this light purple color and worry about the rest later. It looks like we're going to do highlights with gouache, so you don't have to reserve any whites. Just get this whole thing covered in purple. You can quote me on that one. That's going to be when I run for political office, that's going to be my slogan, is let's just get this whole thing covered in purple. All right, done. Boom. That was not that hard. Yes, Shadow Violet is Daniel Smith. It's one of my absolute favorite colors. It's also one of John Muir Law's favorite colors. You can see how it's one of my colors here that's running out. You can see this one's running out too. That is the Bloodstone Genuine. Shadow Violet is amazing. I highly, highly recommend that color to anybody. I think that it's also in, Alexander, if you're, that's one of the cool things about being on the Patreon is we do have like a traveling nature journal kit that gets mailed from one Patreon member to the next, and it has a lot of these colors in a watercolor palette. That is one of the benefits, that if you just support through PayPal, you don't have access to that, unfortunately. Okay, so it looks like I've got some people that are voting for me for political office. That is great. Unfortunately, if I did that, then I wouldn't have time to nature journal and stuff. So it's probably not going to happen. All right, once the first coat of paint is dry, add successive layers of darker paint, bringing out the dorsal body colors and shadows. It looks to me like he's using a warmer color here. He doesn't say exactly which color. I'm a big proponent of writing in books, so I'm going to write which color, and then maybe we can guess which ones they are. Back here I'll write Windsor Violet. I'll just write WV. So if you have a watercolor palette, I highly recommend coming up with abbreviations for all of the colors that you use here. That way when you are painting, you can just go like this, and then you can say like SV plus WV, and you know what colors that you used. Okay, this might be, I don't know who this is. Maybe this is Sandra. We are on pages 174 and 175. Thanks for joining in. Ivea, that sounds super awesome. Please share more in the chat. And for those of you who don't know, if you look over here, if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're watching this on Facebook and you look over here, there should be a live chat section where you can type in anything and communicate with other people. So Ivea just shared a really cool thing, and that sounds like an awesome project. I love the traveling journals, and this having one specifically about climate change stories sounds really cool. Okay, so I'm going to guess that this might be maybe Bloodstone Genuine for this warmer color. So Bloodstone Genuine would be right here. It's similar to Shadow Violet, but warmer. you can see here, oh, that doesn't look quite warm enough. I wonder what he used. Maybe he used a little bit of this like quinacridone, what is this? Quinacridone sienna? And that's looking very brown. Quinacridone sienna plus Bloodstone Genuine makes a little bit of a brown. So I'm just going to do a color swatch here. When you're color matching, I highly recommend doing these swatches. It helps the learning process. So this is Bloodstone Genuine plus Quinacridone Sienna. And that's 2 brown. Maybe he's using, oh, this brush is running out of water. Maybe he's using like the Naphthalmide Maroon, another amazing color. Ooh, that looks about right. Okay, so Naphthalmide Maroon is this color right here. And I'm going to mix that. It looks a little bit too saturated. So I'll mix Naphthalmide Maroon with another color to tone it down to make this color here. Sometimes you can color directly in the book. See, that's pretty close actually. Maybe it'll actually look good. This is the other reason why I like having this paper here, because I can just kind of go like this over the top and see if that. Okay, I think I'm just going to do Naphthalmide Maroon and just water it down. So I'm not going to mix it with any other colors, but I'm just going to water it down and see what it looks like on top of my violet, and it looks pretty close. So I'm just going to roll with it. Once the first coat of paint is dry, add successive layers of darker paint, bringing out the dorsal body colors and shadows. Okay, so I'll get a little bit more Naphthalmide Maroon, and I think I'm just going to put all of my chips, all of my money on Naphthalmide Maroon. If it comes out too saturated, I'm not too worried about it. Oops, I mixed in a little bit of blue from this area. All right, so here we go. It looks like he's leaving out the eyes and some of the legs, but other than that, we're going to do the whole, this is one of those stages though. At this stage, you could mess up it's possible that you will go from a drawing that you like to a drawing that you don't like. And to tell you the truth, that is scary, but it's not the worst thing that could happen. So I think a lot of times in art, we make decisions from that space, and we've maybe had that experience where we started off with a black and white drawing, and then when we colored in the black and white drawing, we went from something that we liked more to something that we liked less. And the lesson there should not be, don't do that ever again, because it's actually important to try things that don't work out sometimes. If you never fail or you never try something that doesn't work out, you're never going to really grow, or you're going to grow very slowly. So going past that point and having experience going past that point and having experience trying to figure out what to do once you go past that point is really important. If you always stop your drawing before you mess it up, there's a lot of things that you'll never learn. I'm seeing mine is turning out a lot more purple than his, but I think I'm okay with that. Like I said, my slogan for my presidential campaign is let's put purple over everything. Shoot, I don't remember the exact verbatim quote now. All right, so that looks about right. It looks like it's sort of blotchy down here on the legs, so try to get that blotchiness. Maybe I'll zoom in a little bit more, and I'll raise the table up. Here we go. The table is coming up closer to the camera. As we get closer to the end, we'll get closer to the camera. And I think it's about time for a chocolate break. So I do have this Stone Ground for bold flavor. I'm not actually always the hugest fan of Stone Ground chocolate, but I'm on the grocery outlet diet. So it's whatever is at grocery outlet is the kind of chocolate that I tend to get. So this happened to be what they had. I don't know why people, I feel like marketing is so weird. Stone Ground for bold flavor. I'm not really sure if I agree with that statement, but whatever. It's okay. I know some people who really like the Stone Ground chocolate, but it's a little bit gritty, but some people like that. Okay. So, oh shoot. Now we're about to get into the gouache. Gouache. It is the most exciting, hardest to pronounce word in nature journaling and in art. And if you can spell it correctly, you get major bonus points. And um, there's some really good comments, by the way, in the live chat. So if you haven't tuned into the live chat, please do. I highly recommend it. There's some real great people making some hilarious comments and insightful comments over there. So get over and participate in that chat. If you don't know how to, it might depend on the device that you're on, but I know that even when I look on my cell phone, I can see the live chat on the YouTube video. So hopefully you can figure out how to see it. Sometimes you might have to change, if your screen is maximized, you might have to reduce it. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna get into gouache. So gouache is really weird. It's kind of like watercolor. It's kind of like the dark side of the force. In the John Muir Laws palette, he has some squirted out right here. It comes in tubes just like watercolor. And what you should aim for is when you're getting it ready to use, you want this consistency to be like heavy cream. And the confusing thing compared to watercolor is when you first put it down, see how light it looks? As it dries, it's going to get darker. So the opposite of watercolor. Watercolor, as it dries, gets paler. And gouache, as it dries, gets darker or less opaque. So see how it's covering up these dark colors right now? As it dries, it's going to cover those up less. Ooh, Angie wins a prize for correctly spelling gouache, I think. So we are going to get ready to do the step number 9. Create the light spots with layers of opaque gouache. If the first strokes are not opaque enough, add more layers until the spots stand out against the dark background. So he doesn't say which color he's using. That reminds me, I have to add notes here. This is, what was that I used there? Naphthalene maroon in M. And then down here, it looks like he's not just using white gouache, he's using white with yellow. So it is possible to mix gouache with watercolor, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to get this gouache mixed into all of your other watercolors, because watercolor is transparent, and if you have a little bit of gouache mixed into there, I don't know, it's this sort of like weird purity law that watercolorists come up with. Maybe it's something that needs to be tested, like the Reinheitsgebot, or that weird Bavarian beer purity law about like what ingredients could be put into beer and what ingredients couldn't be put into beer. So maybe it's something that needs to be tested before we all just like repeat it without testing it. But I think I'm gonna just be kind of rebellious and go ahead and just mix it straight into here. And this is something most people would tell you not to do. So whatever, maybe I'm just totally ruining my watercolor palette, but I'm going to mix in here with my yellow. Wow, it's kind of taking over. And I think that's probably enough yellows and oranges just from what I have in here. And I'm going to take that. Wow, I've actually never done that before. It feels kind of crazy and fun to do something you're not supposed to do. Okay, so it has a little bit of that peachy color, and his looks a little bit more yellow, but I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to go ahead and make these blotches all over my salamander on here. Ooh, Cindy's asking about Costa Rican coffee. I'm definitely going to be drinking coffee while I'm there, but I don't think I'm going to be nature journaling in any places like specific coffee plantations. And Alexandra Walters wins the prize for spelling gouache, for sure. That's how it should be written. Oh my gouache. Okay, so now we're going to go in here. Hopefully this is pale enough. If not, we'll soon learn. It looks like there's some splotches. Let's see if I can get this light a little bit better. Sometimes it's hard to get the light right. Okay, remember gouache is like the dark side of the forest, or more accurately, the opaque side of the forest. So some people are like, no, they won't let their friends don't let friends use gouache. For some reason, there's this weird sort of like prohibition against gouache or something in the watercolor community, that if you use gouache, it's sort of like not pure watercolor anymore. Why is that? Someone should do like a sociological study on that. Be fascinating. Because there's a lot of benefits, I mean, that's one of the hardest things about watercolor is that you can't put pale colors on top of dark colors. Whereas with like oil painting or acrylics, you can. It's kind of like painting with melted ice cream. Good thing it's not Inktober right now, because if I were using gouache during Inktober, someone would probably get really upset. So one thing that is important to notice is that if my background color is dark, it shows up more. If my background color is not dark, it doesn't show up very much. So it's all about, remember, color and value is all about relationship. A lot of people think like these colors are just dark or saturated by themselves, but all colors are in relationship. If there's nothing else next to them, they're not really red, or they're not really warm or dark or pale or saturated. All of those things exist in relationship. It's more complicated that way, but that is the truth, in my opinion. All right, I am going to clean my brush really well, because one thing that can happen with gouache is it can get sucked, and with other watercolors too, is it can get sucked up inside. And you might notice, like I can notice already, that the water inside of my water brush is getting sort of polluted by my gouache. Oh my gouache, it is getting polluted up in here. I need to clean this. All right, I think I cleaned off most of it. Okay, so where are we at? Darken the eyes with a solid coat of watercolor or black pen. Be careful, an error here will stand out. Texture the skin by adding a few dots with a brown colored pencil. Oh shoot, I got rid of all my colored pencils long ago, so I'm going to have to do something else for that. But let's do these dark eyes. It looks scary, but we're going to do it. So I think he's saying solid coat of watercolor. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go crazy and just use my darkest watercolor, which is neutral tint, and just put in these eyes. Scary. Salamanders with the solid black eyes. Wow. Okay. All right. Clean that off of my brush. Now I'm going to texture the skin by adding a few dots with a brown colored pencil. So I see these dots everywhere. I think that's not just where I spilled chocolate on the book. His looks like it has way more contrast. So I'm noticing his background color. I just did that Windsor Violet. Windsor Violet wasn't enough, apparently. I'm noticing he's got way more contrast there. At this point, it's a little bit late in the game probably to add that in, unless I want to be like really rebellious. But okay, screw it. I'm going to do it. All right, so I'm going to take this, whatever this brown color is here in this earth tones mixing area. I'm just going to take this and a little bit more of that one. I don't even remember off the top of my head the name of that one. Maybe it's like burnt umber, raw umber, named after some place in Italy or Southern Europe where they dug it up, during the Renaissance. I'm going to just take a bunch of that. This is probably going to mess everything up. I'm going to take a bunch of that and just kind of go over a whole bunch of my salamanders. So don't try this at home. This is probably not the best time to add it in, especially since I made the gouache already. Like, this could totally mess up the gouache, but I'm just going to go for it and see what happens. Sometimes it's good to take risks, especially if that's not what you normally do. If you normally take lots of risks and need to practice kind of just chilling out and doing things step by step, then this is not for you. But whoa, okay, just messed up the gouache. You could see right there for a second that when I touched the gouache, suddenly it got like mixed into this darker color. And now I feel like it's going to be too much of a brown salamander, but hopefully this will the purple will come through a little bit more in a second once this brown color dries. And it's good to kind of ruin paintings every once in a while by pushing them too far. That's something I never used to do, and all my watercolors were kind of anemic. But sometimes it's good to push them too far and see what happens. Oh no, people are talking about ginger snaps up in here. You're making me hungry. Okay, so I'm noticing my yellow is not quite as yellow as his yellow and these spots, and I'm not going to worry about that right now. And I'm actually going to use my blow dryer, so I'm going to mute my microphone for a second while I do that. Whoa! Whoa! You gotta be careful when you use your blow dryer. Things start flying everywhere. Could blow your chocolate away. Oh, and look at that! I made a little smear there. But I'm all about trying to create like a fault-tolerant nature journaling style. So like a little smear, hopefully, even though it kind of looks like a poop coming out from the salamander, try not to worry about that. I'm gonna darken some of these lines here. I'm not even really like holding my pencil correctly as I do this. I just want to I want to try to practice like making pages that will look okay even if there's sort of like messiness, because sometimes when I'm nature journaling in the field, things are going wrong. All right, I'm gonna put a teeny bit of yellow in here, like just straight yellow, and try to match his yellow a little bit more there. I'm gonna put it in on top of this gouache, which should be dry now. Whoa, that's really yellow. Oh, dang. Okay. Whoa. I'll just kind of chill it out a little bit there, buddy. There we go. So one thing you can do is you can put it in strong like that. Then you can quickly clean your brush here. This is a good watercolor technique. Clean your brush and then come back and sort of lift it or spread it around. See how I'm mellowing it out now? Yeah, just simmer down there. Just mellow out there a little bit. There. Now, I feel like that looks pretty good, like compared to his. That's starting to look like more like right in terms of the yellow. So I still need to get these, whatever, these skin dots. I'm not really seeing the skin dots. And then we have one last stage. We're almost done here. I can't believe this. We're busting through this. I hope, please post in the comments how it's going for you. I'm noticing lots of comments in here about the food, and that's really beautiful, everybody. And thank you for all of that. But let's post a couple comments here about like how your pages are coming out. Like how's your salamander doing? Is your salamander? This is not really a very edible organism either, by the way, compared to, you know, finger cakes or ginger snaps or all of these other tantalizing things people are talking about. Yes, please send me some of that gingerbread, Alexandra. That sounds really tasty. Okay, so I'm gonna do these dark spots that he's talking about, but I'm just gonna use my brush for them. So I'm gonna get just a mixture of colors from these two darkest colors here, and I'm gonna see if I can just test them here briefly since I don't have a colored pencil. So I'm noticing my brush is loaded, too loaded. So if I make my brush a little bit drier, I can get these small dots, maybe even drier than that. Test the dots here. That's why I love this test paper, because I can kind of, from my previous colors that I've put down, I can see what things will look like on top of those. Sandra's still on the drawing part. Well, hurry up, Sandra. You can do it. I'm just gonna like add some dots, crazy dots in here. If you have colored pencils at home, let me know how it works with colored pencils instead of the watercolor. I think that's technically how we should be doing this. Oh yeah, just go crazy now with the texture. This is the place where if you want to ruin your painting, you definitely can. That is an option. Failure is an option. Remember that. And that's fine, because the truth is like there's different kinds of failure, and the failure when you don't try something or you don't push the painting very far, you don't learn very much from that type of failure, that tentative, being overly tentative. But the type of failure where you push something too far, you can learn a lot more from that one. All right, I think that's good. So those are kind of big and wet little droplets. So I probably need to dry them a little bit before I do the last part. But let me read the last part here. Step number 11. Dun, dun, dun. Oops, bumped the mic. Now the fun part. Paint a line of highlights with thick, opaque, permanent white gouache. Make thin, irregular lines along the reflecting surface. Study where the light falls on the real subject, life or photograph. If you need to make it up, try placing it between the center light and core shadow, a little closer to the center light. A little highlight goes a long way. It is easy to overdo it, so just add a suggestion, then stop. Remember, John Muir Laws did a whole postgraduate program in science illustration, and so he probably did do this without a photograph, and has sort of like an intuitive understanding of where these highlights are going to go. Look at where he placed them there. He also mentioned the topic of core shadow. I'm now noticing I have no core shadow on my salamander. So just very quickly, without having to have any naked models in the room, I will show you what a core shadow is. So if you have a cylinder like this, sort of like a naked model, the core shadow is actually the darkest shadow that you would see on the cylinder would not completely come to the bottom here. So pretend this is someone's torso or someone's arm. Notice how the shadow is right there. That's called the core shadow. And now notice how in his painting, he's managed to sort of intuitively incorporate that. And I kind of doubt he's actually working from a photo, but in his mind, he knows that this should be the darkest. And it could be partly the local color of the salamander is lighter here, but it's also partly the core shadow. Now look at mine. I have the local color, but I don't have that core shadow. I already added in the details of these spots, but the core shadow is more important because your brain interprets that as three-dimensionality. So mine doesn't look as three-dimensional as his because I didn't get this core shadow. And I'm actually planning, me, Ivea, and Eli are going to start a band really soon, and it's going to be called Core Shadow. So brace yourselves for that band. You can guess what genre it's going to be in the comments. So since we missed that part, but we're noticing it now, what we can do is just come back in here, and I'll probably use Shadow Violet. That's another great name for it. That's actually my stage name is Shadow Violet, but it would also be a great band name. So I'm going to get a little bit of that. Well, my brush is, the water's coming out really slowly on this one. I'm going to get a really light amount of that. Test it here. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to try to emulate his core shadows before I do this highlight. You know, once I do that gouache highlight there, I can't add the core shadow. Not dark enough. I need a little bit more. Give me a little purple. Okay, so now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to try to do this core shadow. Core shadow. Dun, dun, dun. Core shadow. I think it would be from like the early 90s, probably. Yes, I love core shadows. They're the best. Seriously, that just made my salamander look so much better. To celebrate, I'm going to eat another piece of chocolate because that's a game changer. Understanding this concept of core shadows is really important. Do you see? It's not right on the edge. It's like it's not right on the edge. A lot of times you'd think, okay, here's a shape. Here's a three-dimensional shape, and the shadow. Well, shouldn't the shadow be like right here? No, that's not the way that things often are in reality, because weirdly, so there's light hitting here, right? Light is hitting here, light is hitting here, and that's why there's a shadow there. But the way things work in real life is more complicated. So there's actually light coming and bouncing off shit over here. Oh no, I used a bad word. I'm gonna have to demonetize this video. So the light is bouncing off and creating a little bit of light on this side. So what that means is that the main shadow, the core shadow, is actually a little bit away from the edge. It's not right on the edge. So if the light is coming from this side, the core shadow is kind of going to be like here. Does that make any sense? Now you have to look for this in the real world, okay? Okay, once this core shadow is dry, experiment with this. This is one of those things, this is probably in the top 10 things you could do to improve your drawing, is understanding core shadows. Being able to imagine where a core shadow would go. Like, let's just skip randomly into this book real quick. Wait, not there. Okay, not there. Wait, here we go. Maybe in here, or maybe in here. Maybe not. Where's the core shadow on this bird? No, not. Okay, here we go. Look at that. Look at this bird right here. Notice how it has this shadow. I don't know if he really saw that, or he just knew that that should be there. Or like this, part of its local color, but notice how it doesn't go all the way up to the edge. So understanding core shadow is really going to make a huge difference in your artwork, because it's just one of those most important things. Now I forgot what page that I was on. Shoot. Look, there should be a core shadow on this paintbrush right here, so I'm going to add a core shadow. Look, it needs it over here too. Look how it automatically looks more three-dimensional. So I highly recommend you experiment with core shadow. Look, here it is on this branch right here. He left a little bit of a highlight underneath there. So these are the kinds of things that in your mind, if you know about them, look on the branch too, core shadow, boom. If you know about on the pencil, look at that. Look at on this pencil right here. It's got a highlight right there, but it also has a little bit of light underneath, and the core shadow is right here near the edge. This is one of those things, the core shadow, that if you know about it, it will make all of your drawing better. Top 10. Oh, shoot. Now I lost my page. What page were we on? I think the Salamanders are before the, there we go. Okay, we're going to finish this bad boy, bad girl, bad them off. This salamander, I don't know what their gender identity is, but amphibians can be kind of flexible, so don't make any assumptions here. And all we have to do now, if this is dry, our core shadow is dry, we're going to do this highlight. And we want this highlight to be, he says, if you need to make it up, try placing the highlight between the center light and the core shadow, a little closer to the center light. I'm not totally sure what the center light is, but I'm guessing that it's like maybe on the center line of the animal where the light is hitting directly. So like if the sun is coming straight down here, maybe it's hitting like here in the middle. And so I'm guessing, plus we can just see where he put the highlight. So let's just do that. So what we're going to do now is, remember, we're going to make that like melted ice cream consistency in our white gouache. Melted ice cream. I'll test a little bit of that here on top of these dark things, and that should be fine. And remember, this is easy to overdo, but this is our last step. I'll put a little bit on the arm. Don't want to over pattern it. Oh, a little bit. He put a little bit on the eyeball. Whoa, that is way too much on the eyeball. Oh my gosh, that is just, oh, that is just way too much. Okay, so now I'm going to try to copy the way he makes his kind of go sideways, which is like not very comfortable for me, but certain parts of this. Oh, look, he goes over the yellow spot. Oh, and then he switches sort of more to this side on the tail. And then down here. And then on the leg. This is the part you can really overdo. So it's like the frosting on the cake. Don't overdo it. Boom. Okay, I think I'm done. All right, cool. Great. I feel good about that. You could dab with a damp edge of paper towel to take off. Oh, you must be talking about where I put my extra. Yeah, let me see if I could. Good tip, Alexandra. Ooh, wow, that's cool. I could get really into that technique. Let me make another sharp. Okay, I might have smudged it a little bit much, but wait, maybe I need a little bit on that side. So this is where you have to be careful. Whoa, okay, hold yourself back. Okay, stop, Marley. All right, I feel like that's pretty good. I'm gonna look at his. Looking pretty good. I feel good about that. Okay, now don't forget, this is really important. Remember, in my very extremist, from my very extremist perspective, this is not really nature journaling. This is, like this is art, this is painting, this is science illustration or natural history illustration, but we're drawing from someone else's drawings, and we're not like actually looking at something in nature or an animal. So we're not able to make like some of the observations and like amazing firsthand discoveries that we would if we're nature journaling in nature. So I think it's really important to reference that on my page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write sort of like a metadata, but for where I'm at right now. So I'm just going to write Nature Journal Show, and I'm going to write the date. Someone help me out here. It's the 17th. And I'm going to write the page numbers from the book that I'm looking at. I'm going to zoom out now to give you the full perspective again. You see all the like wrappers and stuff that are surrounding me. I'm going to write, I'll just write JML book, John Muir Law's book, page 174 to 175. And that's good for metadata and just to know that you're doing this from studying from someone else, and which is totally legit, but it's really important to incorporate that. So later, when you're looking through your nature journal, you know that this wasn't something, I mean, maybe 10 years in the future, I might not be aware that was this something that I studied from a book or something that I saw in person. So I'm going to do a little quick switch of camera here and tell you about some of the exciting stuff that's going to come up in the next video. So this is some crazy news right here. I've got a couple boxes here that I'm going to open in my next video that is going to be all about best gifts for nature journaling and a nature journal sort of wish list for the holidays. And there's a huge box here. This is really crazy, and this has been a long time in the process, but you might be able to figure it out. This is not the brand name that I know them as, but you might be able to figure out if you do a little bit of investigative sleuthing online. It's very exciting, and it's a product that I've been trying to get some free versions of for a while because I'm basically constantly using their product. I've probably spent thousands of dollars perhaps on this product, and I have never gotten any free before, and I've never been sponsored by any company, so I've been working with them for a while. But I'm going to do a whole, before I go to Costa Rica on Monday, I'm going to do a whole episode about some of the best gifts for nature journalers. It's going to be like a whole Santa Claus, please Santa, get me these things. Or if you have another nature journaler in your life, what are those things that you should get? And I'll open both of those boxes, talk about the supplies in them, and I'm going to have at least 2 or 3 discount codes for watchers of the Nature Journal show. So for all 30 of you that are watching live right now, and for all of those that you watch this as a recorded version, you can use these codes to get, I think some of them are going to be like 15, 20% off discounts for shopping for some of these Nature Journal supplies. And they're going to be from cool people who have their own Nature Journal supply stores. It's not going to be like big companies and stuff like that. So that's going to be coming up in the next couple of days before I go to Costa Rica. And then there's going to be a long silent period. It's going to be the first time in like 2 years where the Nature Journal show does not come out at least once or twice a week. So there's going to be like a month-long gap where I don't make any shows, and that's going to be the first time in a long time. So it's going to be a little bit of rest. Obviously, I'm going to be nature journaling and filming during the trip, and I'll keep you all posted. Thank you all, especially for those of you that are supporters on my Patreon, or for those cool ones of you that send me like neat things to try out. You know who you are. And thank you to all of you. You're awesome. And more stuff's going to be coming soon. And part of the reason for the silence is I've been super busy also working on some grants. So I'm currently tonight before midnight need to finish a grant for National Geographic, because I'm trying to get some funding to help me go nature journal in cool places so that I don't just have to kind of make it from my own budget, which is not super huge, as you might know. So thank you all. Anyways, have a wonderful evening and keep nature journaling. That's the most important thing of all. Just nature journal, nature journal, nature journal. It's good for everything. All right, everyone. I will see you in I might just see you in 2022. All right. Bye. Bye.